Is this yours, or were you planning on leaving without paying?
No, I was just looking at it.
No, I can hear the door, the black pretty cool.
Do not try that with me. I saw what you did. Now, are you going to cooperate, or are we going to do this the hard way?
The fluorescent lights in the thrift store hummed faintly, a cold, insect-like buzz that latched onto Amina's nerves the moment she stepped inside. She only needed 10 minutes. A quick scan of fabrics, a few texture notes for her design board, then back to the studio. Nothing complicated. But the door hadn't even fully closed behind her when she felt it. The shift. The man near the counter. The uniform. The stiff jaw. The narrowed eyes. Officer Rourke. She didn't know his name yet. She only knew the look. The one that scraped across her skin like sandpaper. Amina moved toward a rack of jackets. Soft denim. Worn leather. Her sketching fingers flexed automatically. Then boots approached. Heavy. Purposeful. Hands where I can see them. The words sliced through the aisle, clean and sharp. Shoppers turned. One woman froze with a lamp in her hands. Another man pretended to scroll his phone, but his thumb didn't move. Amina lifted her hands slowly. Heat crawled up her throat, tight and airless. She kept her voice steady. I'm browsing. That's all. Officer Rourke's jaw tightened. His hand hovered over his holster, thumb grazed in the clasp like a silent threat. You match a theft suspect, he said. Don't make this difficult. Her breath snagged, and then he reached for her wrist. The overhead lights flickered. Somewhere near the front, a manager whispered into a phone. The moment stretched, fragile and shivering, and then collapsed as Rourke lunged. Amina stepped into the thrift store with her notebook tucked under one arm and a mental checklist already forming. The air smelled faintly of dust and citrus cleaner, the kind that lingered on metal racks and plastic hangers. She didn't mind. Texture was texture. Inspiration hid anywhere she looked closely enough. She moved toward the outerwear section. A denim jacket with frayed seams caught her attention. She touched it lightly, testing softness, imagining how it might drape if recut into a panel skirt. A quiet moment, focused and intentional. Boots thudded behind her. She didn't turn. Not yet. A voice cut across the aisle. Ma'am, step away from the merchandise. She froze for a fraction of a second before turning. The man was tall, pale, uniform pressed too sharply. Officer Rourke. His eyes scanned her with a certainty that felt rehearsed. I'm browsing, Amina said, even, controlled. That's so. His hand rested on his belt, fingers brushing the holster. Got a call about a theft suspect. Description matches. Her jaw tightened. A description of what? He didn't answer. He stepped closer. Too close. A shopper lingering near a shelf pretended to study a vase. Another moved toward the exit quietly. No one met her eyes. Amina reached slowly into her bag. I have ID, she said. I can show you. Rourke's voice hit again, louder. Hands where I can see them. The command ricocheted through the aisle. A child 2 carts away flinched. Amina lifted her hands. Her pulse pricked at her wrists, but her face stayed calm. There's no reason to escalate this. Rourke circled her slightly, like she was a corner problem. You were seen acting suspicious. I touched the jacket. That's not what I heard. What exactly did you hear? She asked. His eyes flicked down, then up, dismissive. Doesn't matter. You're coming with me. He reached for her wrist. She stepped back, not running, just reclaiming space. I haven't done anything. He grabbed her harder than necessary, twisting her arm behind her back. Pain flared up her shoulder. Stop resisting. I'm not resisting, she said, breath thin. Her notebook fell to the floor, pages scattering like startled birds. A teenager near the fitting rooms lifted a phone subtly. Recording. A small act of defiance in a room filled with silence. Rourke pushed Amina toward the exit. You're being detained for questioning. Based on what? She managed. He didn't answer. Outside, the sun struck her eyes harshly. He opened the patrol car door, still squeezing her wrist. The teen with the phone followed at a distance. He whispered, "It's live," to no one in particular. Amina tried to steady her breathing as Rourke shoved her into the back seat. The door slammed shut, sealing the heat, the smell of vinyl, the sound of rising static from his radio. Her reflection in the window looked unfamiliar, cornered, restrained, silent. Rourke walked around the car. The live stream continued. The engine started, and the city, unaware, began to turn toward her story. The station smelled of old coffee and lemon disinfectant, a sterile mix that clung to the walls like residue. Amina stepped inside under Rourke's grip, her wrists still throbbing from the cuffs he removed only moments earlier. The lobby buzzed with phones, printers murmured conversations. No one looked at her long enough to acknowledge the wrongness of her presence. They saw a suspect, not a citizen. Rourke guided her toward a metal bench. "Sit." She remained standing. "I want to know why I'm here." "You'll speak when asked," he replied. A desk officer glanced over. What she brought in for? "Possible shoplifting," Rourke said. "Possible?" Amina said sharply. "He never asked the store. He grabbed me the second he saw me." Rourke shot her a glare. "Sit. Down." She sat, not from obedience, from calculation. Standing gave him too much room to escalate. A sergeant emerged from a hallway, heavy-set, expression carved into a bureaucratic frown. His badge read Sergeant Delvin. "Rourke, report. Suspicious behavior in a store. Matches the call description." Delvin nodded as if that explained everything. "Bring her to interview too." Amina rose, following them down a hallway where the lighting dimmed, flickering slightly. The interview room was a cold square, metal table, 2 chairs, camera bolted to the corner. Delvin sat. Rourke leaned against the wall like a silent enforcer. Amina lowered herself onto the chair. "I'd like to call an attorney." Delvin folded his hands. "You're not under arrest. Just answering questions. So I can leave?" He paused. "We need clarity first." Amina felt her pulse tighten. "Then ask your questions." Delvin clicked a pen. "Why were you in the store?" "Research. Fabric texture. Sourcing ideas." "For what purpose?" "It's my field." "What field is that?" "Design." Delvin and Rourke exchanged a look, one of mild skepticism, barely disguised. Delvin wrote something down. "Did you take anything from the store?" "No." "Did you plan to?" "No." "So you claim—" Amina inhaled slowly. "Check their inventory. Check the cameras. Check anything. You'll see I didn't steal." Rourke stepped forward. "People like you get jumpy when questioned. That's all we saw." Amina's jaw flexed. "People like me." Delvin cleared his throat. An artificial sound meant to gloss over the implication. Officer Rourke responded to a call. "These situations can escalate. Cooperation prevents misunderstandings." "Misunderstanding," she repeated. "That what you call being shoved into a patrol car?" Delvin busied himself with the papers. "We're following protocol." The camera in the corner blinked red. Amina wondered how many similar sessions it had watched. How many people had been swallowed by the same process? The door opened suddenly. A younger officer stepped in with a tablet. "Sergeant," store manager called back. They checked footage. No theft. Delvin's expression didn't change. "Anything match the suspect description?" The young officer hesitated. "No, not really." Delvin nodded once. "All right, release her." Rourke stiffened. "That's premature." "She's clear," the sergeant said. "We're done." Amina stood slowly. "I'd like documentation of this detainment." Rourke scoffed. "There is no detainment, just a conversation." "You put me in a squad car." "It was for safety," he replied. "Whose?" He looked away. Delvin gestured to the door. "You're free to go." Free. The word felt sour. Amina walked out without another glance at either of them. Outside, the late afternoon sun had thinned into pale gold. The station steps felt too steep, her legs too heavy. A few people lingered nearby, waiting for rides, finishing shifts, staring at phones. One of them approached hesitantly. The teenager from the thrift store. He held the phone tight in his hand. His voice was quiet but steady. "Ma'am, it's me. I filmed everything." Amina blinked. You follow me here? I wanted to make sure they didn't delete anything or try something. He held out the screen. A pause video showed Rourke grabbing her wrist, the frame shaky but clear. It's been online for an hour, he continued. It blew up. There's a lot of people watching. Amina stared at the screen. Comments scrolled endlessly. Faces she'd never meet, analyzing a moment she couldn't undo. She swallowed. Why did you film it? The teen shifted his weight. Because nobody else was doing anything. Amina took a slow breath. What's your name? Marcel. Thank you, Marcel, she said. Her voice was subdued, almost foreign sounding in her own ears. Someone across the parking lot recognized her from the video. She could see it in their lingering stare, the subtle whisper into a companion's ear. The world was already rearranging itself around what had happened. Amina stepped back, grounding herself. I need to get home. Do you need a ride? The boy asked. No, just time. He nodded but didn't leave until she reached the sidewalk, as if standing guard. A passing bus hissed to a stop. Cars moved steadily through the dusk. The ordinary noise of the city returned, but the normalcy didn't reach her. Amina touched her wrist where Rourke's grip had been. Faint ache, sharp memory. She walked on, each step deliberate. The video followed her, not through sound or screen, but through the undeniable shift in the air, the sense of something now unfolding that she could not control, something that would demand answers from her, from him, from the city itself. By morning, the city had already decided her story belonged to it. The video sat at the top of 3 social platforms, clipped and reposted by accounts Amina had never heard of. News outlets ran cautious headlines. Officer detains woman in thrift store incident. Investigation pending. The wording was careful, engineered to avoid blame, but the footage itself cut clean through caution. Rourke's grip, Amina's controlled voice, the silence of bystanders. Nothing ambiguous. Amina watched from her kitchen table, phone vibrating every few minutes with notifications she refused to open. She sipped cold tea that she didn't remember brewing. The doorbell rang. Her assistant, Layla, stepped inside without waiting for an invitation. You're trending. Amina rubbed her forehead. I know. You should see what the team chat looks like. I'd rather not. Layla hesitated before handing her a tablet. They don't know it's you. They're just talking about the woman in the jacket. Half the office is furious. The other half is analyzing how the clip's going to impact Saturday's preview show. Amina looked away from the screen. Of course they are. Layla lowered her voice. Are you okay? Amina didn't answer. She stood, walking toward her studio space, a converted room filled with fabric boards, sketches, color swatches. Her sanctuary. But even here, the video felt present like static in the air. Her phone buzzed again. Unknown number. She let it ring. At the precinct. Rourke sat across from an internal affairs officer whose expression bordered on politely uninterested. We're conducting a routine evaluation, the investigator said. Just walk us through the events. Rourke folded his arms. I responded to a call. A theft suspect in the area. She matched description. What was the description? He paused. Female. Dark jacket. The investigator tapped a pen against the table. Anything else? Rourke's jaw flexed. Suspicious behavior. The officer made a non-committal sound, writing something down. Public perception is running ahead of the facts. We need the written report by end of day. That's it. Rourke asked. That's standard procedure. The conversation ended with a handshake that meant nothing. Across the city, inside the open-plan workspace of Amina's company, her employees gathered around a shared screen. That can't be her, Marcus said. Looks like her, but the internet says she's some shopper. Still, another designer murmured, It's messed up. Layla reappeared in the doorway. Back to work, she said gently. Showcase week. Don't let online noise derail focus. No one fully obeyed, and Amina, from her closed office, could hear the half-whispers in the hall. That officer was out of line. She didn't do anything. But what if the story is missing context? It's dangerous to jump to conclusions. The same old lines. The same fragile distance people clung to when the problem wasn't theirs. Amina closed her eyes. At noon, her CFO, Owen, knocked. "We need to talk strategy." Amina didn't lift her gaze. Strategy for what? Public relations, investor confidence, brand risk. The story is gaining traction. And the company can't afford uncertainty. He softened his tone. "You don't have to address this publicly." "Not yet." Amina exhaled slowly. "But eventually." He didn't deny it. "When you're ready." She turned her face toward the window. The skyline looked unchanged, but the city's conversations had shifted beneath it like an undercurrent. "Close the door on your way out," she said. By late afternoon, a news anchor's voice floated from televisions across restaurants, offices, waiting rooms. "Officials say the department is reviewing the officer's conduct. No disciplinary measures have been announced. The woman in the video has not come forward publicly. Some community leaders call this a symptom of long-standing patterns." Every sentence sounded like a careful balance between acknowledging harm and denying responsibility. Amina recognized cadence. It was the same tone used in every story involving power and the people targeted by it. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. Layla stepped in again, holding out the tablet. "You should see this." On the screen, the city police department's official account had posted a statement. "We are aware of the incident circulating online. The officer acted within preliminary guidelines. We ask the public not to judge before full context emerges." Amina read it twice. "Full context," she said quietly. Layla watched her. "They're trying to frame the narrative." "They already have." Amina set the tablet down, steadying it with her hand. The edge dug into her palm, grounding her back into her own body. She spoke, almost to herself. "They're using the same language they always use." "Which language?" "The language meant to make people forget what they saw." Layla didn't respond. Amina crossed the room, touching a half-finished dress form. The fabric hung loose, pinned but shapeless. For a moment she imagined tearing it down and starting over. Not the dress, but the world that made this moment possible. Her phone rang again. This time she answered. Marcel's voice filled her ear. "They want you to speak. Everyone's asking if you're the woman in the video." Amina's throat tightened. "And if I am?" There was a brief silence. "Then they'll listen." Amina didn't reply. She hung up, letting the room return to stillness. The decision hovered, heavy and inevitable. If she stepped forward, the narrative would shift. If she stayed silent, it would twist without her. The city buzzed outside, the video still unfurling across timelines and screens like a fuse burning towards something larger. Amina stood at her design table, hands flat against the wood, and allowed the weight of the moment to settle. Nothing about her life would remain untouched. Not her company, not her anonymity, not her silence. Amina didn't sleep. By dawn, the studio lights were already on, illuminating fabric swatches spread across her work table. Patterns she once viewed with excitement now felt distant, unreachable. Her mind kept circling the same truth. The story was moving without her, shaping her identity in public spaces she had never stepped into. At 8:12 a.m., she walked into the conference room. Her leadership team was already there. Owen, the CFO, Mira, the creative director. From the marketing lead, Layla hovered near the door, eyes cautious. Amina sat at the head of the table. No one spoke. She broke the silence with 4 words. "It was me. Yes." Mira inhaled sharply. Fun muttered something under his breath. Owen leaned forward. "Amina, why didn't you tell us sooner?" "Because I needed to understand myself," she said. "And now?" Mira asked softly. Amina interlaced her fingers. "Now I don't want anyone else telling my story." Owen rubbed his forehead. "We should be extremely careful. Public identity shifts brand dynamics. Investors prefer stability." Mira snapped. She was harassed, assaulted. "And you're talking about stability?" "I'm talking about livelihood," Owen said evenly. "The company needs to navigate the fallout strategically." Amina raised her hand. "Stop, both of you." The room went still. "I'm doing an interview," she said. A controlled one, with a reputable outlet. Owen frowned. You don't have to go public. There are risks. Mira countered. There are bigger risks if she stays silent. They're already shaping the narrative. If she speaks, people see the truth. Finn cleared his throat. If you go public, it becomes political. It already is, Amina replied. No one argued after that. By midday, Layla had secured a slot with Grace Holloway, a journalist known for precise, honest interviews and no tolerance for institutional spin. The studio was quiet when Amina arrived. Grace greeted her with a firm handshake. Thank you for coming, she said. Amina nodded. I'm ready. They sat across from each other under soft lighting. Cameras adjusted. Microphones lifted into position. The room shifted from casual to surgical, every breath captured. Grace began. For the record, are you the woman in the viral video? Yes, Amina said. I am. Grace's tone remained steady. Can you walk us through what happened that day? Amina recounted the thrift store, the aisle, the jacket, the sudden heat of Rourke's grip. She kept her voice controlled, but not flat. Truth didn't require decoration. Grace listened without interruption. When Amina finished, Grace asked, What did you feel at the moment he reached for you? Amina looked straight into the lens. Small, she said, not because I believed I was powerless, but because he believed I was. The room held its breath. Grace nodded once. Slowly. Why speak now? Because silence becomes complicity. Amina answered. Not mine, but the world's. The interview lasted 27 minutes. By evening, clips hit the largest news networks. Amina's name trended alongside words she never imagined tied to her life. Racial profiling, wrongful detainment, police conduct investigation. Some comments were supportive. Many were angry at the system, at Rourke, at the silence that made the incident possible. And some were cruel. Amina forced herself to stop reading. Meanwhile, in his apartment, Rourke sat stiffly in front of his television as the interview replayed. He watched Amina's face fill the screen. Then her voice. He believed he had the right. Rourke's jaw clenched. He grabbed the remote, so hard it creaked. Ridiculous, he muttered. I followed procedure. But even he could hear the unsteadiness in his own tone. His phone buzzed. A message from a fellow officer. She's making you look real bad, man. Union's drafting a response. Another message followed. Lie low. No comments. They'll handle it. Rourke threw the phone across the couch and muttered to the empty room. She's lying. Twisting it. But the words didn't sound convincing. Back at Amina's office, the atmosphere shifted. Designers whispered less. Managers walked with new alertness, as though the hallways carried static. Layla approached her with wide eyes. Look. On her phone screen. Amina's interview passed 1 million views within 6 hours. Comments surged. News anchors began unpacking the systemic issues behind the arrest. Mira arrived shortly afterward. You did it, she said quietly. You made them listen. Amina didn't smile. Listening isn't the same as changing. No, Mira agreed. But it's the part that scares the people in power. That's why it matters. Amina returned to her studio. She ran her hands along the textured fabrics on the wall. Denim, wool, silk. She pulled one sample down and held it up to the light. For a moment, normalcy brushed against her, fragile but present. Then her phone buzzed again. A message from an unfamiliar address. You should have stayed quiet. She deleted it without breathing a word to anyone. Silence had never protected her. She wasn't going to retreat now. A news alert pinged at the top of her screen. Police department announces renewed inquiry into Officer Rourke's conduct following public interview. Amina watched the headline without expression. Grace Holloway's interview hadn't just told the story. It cracked something open. The silence surrounding Rourke's power began to bend. And in the spaces between every headline, every comment, every email she chose not to open, Amina felt the faint, rising hum of something shifting. Not justice. Not yet, but momentum. The backlash arrived before sunrise. Amina woke to dozens of alerts. Not from supporters, but from the police union's official account. Their statement spread across every major platform within minutes. Officer R acted properly based on available information. The individual's accusations represent an emotional distortion of standard procedure. We caution the public against misinformation from parties seeking attention. Amina read the words twice. Emotional distortion. That phrase lodged deep, sharper than any insult. Layla knocked softly and entered with her laptop already open. "They're doubling down," she said. "They're trying to discredit you." Amina's jaw tightened. Of course they are. The union president appeared on a live morning show shortly after. Amina watched from her kitchen, arms folded, expression still. The interviewer asked, "Do you believe the officer used excessive force?" The union president smiled with practiced neutrality. "Absolutely not. People forget that officers deal with threats every day. Sometimes individuals read bias into situations where none exists." Amina turned off the TV. She didn't need to hear the rest. At the office, tension hung thick enough to feel. People spoke in hushed tones, choosing their words carefully as if every sentence might be recorded. Owen pulled Amina into a quiet corner. "Investors are nervous. They don't like controversy." "You mean they don't like accountability?" He lowered his voice. "Look, I support you, but we have a fashion showcase in 3 days. Press coverage is supposed to spotlight our work, not a political storm." Amina held his gaze. "My survival isn't a political storm." He exhaled heavily. "Just be cautious." Mira stepped in right after he left. "Ignore him. He's thinking in numbers, not consequences." Amina managed a small nod, but her pulse remained tight. The threats began around noon. Anonymous messages. Untraceable accounts. "Stop lying. You're ruining a good man's career. Hope you lose everything the way you're trying to destroy him." One message included a photo of her building. Another used her full name and home neighborhood. Amina closed the screen and pressed her fingers to her temples. "These people don't even know me," she murmured. "But they know what they're defending," Mira said quietly from the doorway. "Power doesn't like being exposed." That afternoon, Amina attended a municipal oversight hearing at City Hall. She hadn't planned to go, but the city issued a statement claiming the meeting would address community concerns. It felt like a performance, but one she needed to witness firsthand. Inside the chamber, officials sat behind polished desks, microphones glowing. Their faces carried the same diplomatic calm. Too gentle, too calculated. A committee member began with the usual script. "We understand the public's worry. The department is reviewing the incident. We ask for patience." A man in the audience called out, "Reviewing means nothing if he gets away with it." Security quieted him. Another official continued, "We must emphasize that officers face challenging conditions." Amina stood. The room stilled. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. "Challenging conditions don't justify abuse," she said, "and they don't erase what happened." The officials shifted uncomfortably. She continued, "I was detained without cause. I complied. I explained. I provided ID. None of that mattered. Not to the officer. Not to the system that protects him." A few audience members murmured agreement. The committee chair cleared his throat. "Ms. Diallo, we understand your feelings." Amina cut him off. "My experience," she said. "Not feelings. Experience." The room went silent again. She stepped back but kept her eyes locked on the officials, refusing to soften her posture. Several cameras in the room angled toward her. For a moment, no one spoke. Then another committee member attempted to regain control. "We're committed to a fair process. Independent review is underway." Amina didn't sit. "Fairness requires transparency," she said. "Not vague promises. Not political language. Not the same routines used to bury the truth." Her voice didn't tremble. Theirs did. Finally, the chair forced a procedural pivot. "We'll take additional questions from the public later." Amina sat slowly. Not a victory, but a fracture, and fracturing mattered. When she returned to the hallway, Grace Holloway was waiting. "You handled that with precision," the journalist said. "I'm tired," Amina admitted, You still spoke, Grace replied. That's not nothing. Cameras flashed as Amina pushed through the lobby and down the steps of City Hall. Protesters had gathered outside, not a huge crowd, but enough to hold signs and chant for accountability. Marcel, the teen who filmed everything, spotted her and ran over. Miss Amina, they heard you in there. Amina looked at him, at his earnest certainty. I hope someone did. You made the officials nervous, he said. That's a start. She almost smiled. Almost. Hours later, back home, Amina received a call from Mira. You should see the clip, Mira said. Your statement from the hearing is everywhere. Amina refreshed her screen. The footage had already spread, her words echoing across platforms, dissected by analysts, celebrated by activists, condemned by defenders of the officer. This time, Amina didn't turn the phone face down. She let the noise in, let it sit, because the silence she'd endured in that thrift store had been worse. That night, as she prepared for bed, a notification appeared at the top of her phone. New witnesses come forward about Officer R's past conduct. Amina stared at the headline. Institutional pushback had come swift and brutal, but the cracks were widening. Amina arrived at the studio early the next morning, hoping to find a few minutes of peace before the day spiraled into another public storm. But the moment she pushed open the door, she found Mira and Layla already huddled around a laptop, their faces tense. You saw it? Layla asked. No, Amina replied. I just woke up. Mira turned the laptop toward her. A former officer just came forward. The headline glowed across the screen. Retired Sergeant Claims Officer R. Has history of unreported aggression. Below it, a video thumbnail showed a woman, late 50s, silver braids tied neatly, eyes sharp and steady. Amina clicked play. The woman introduced herself as Sergeant Lillian Becky, retired after 28 years on the force. Her voice carried the weight of someone who had learned long ago not to tremble. Officer R didn't just snap, she said. His record is clean because the department kept it clean. I filed concerns twice. Both were dismissed. I was told not to create division. Amina felt her breath hitch. Sergeant Becky continued. I watched the video of Ms. Diallo. Same pattern. Same escalation. Same disregard. Layla whispered, she sounds fearless. Mira added, we're tired of watching the same cycle. Amina leaned back in her chair, mind racing. We need to talk to her. Today. 2 hours later, Sergeant Becky met them at a small cafe tucked between an art gallery and a hardware store. She arrived wearing a dark coat and a bad-shaped indentation still visible on her old lanyard clip, the kind of detail that spoke without words. Amina, she greeted warmly, extending her hand. I'm sorry you went through that, and I'm sorry it took this long for someone to say something. Amina shook her hand. Thank you for stepping forward. I know that wasn't easy. Becky shook her head. What's worse is staying silent. I did that for years. They sat, the low hum of the cafe, creating a barrier around their conversation. I documented everything, Becky said, placing a folder on the table. Incidents, reports, even testimonies from recruits he intimidated. Amina stared at the folder, thick, worn, dense enough to shift the weight of an entire investigation. Why come forward now? Amina asked gently. Becky hesitated. Because watching your video felt like watching my failure repeat itself. I couldn't protect the women who came to me. I can't undo that, but I can stand with you. Amina swallowed the knot rising in her throat. You're not alone now, Mira said. Not anymore, Becky agreed. News of the whistleblower spread faster than anyone anticipated. By noon, major outlets were requesting interviews. Hashtags multiplied. Protest groups announced a march for the weekend. But the louder the support grew, the more vicious the pushback became. The police union released a counter-statement by afternoon. The retired sergeant's claims are exaggerated and stem from personal grievances. Her records show no formal complaints regarding Officer R. Amina read it with a bitter twist. Of course they're denying everything. Mira folded her arms. They're scrambling. Layla added, Scrambling means afraid. Still, fear wasn't a one-way street. Amina received a call from an unknown number that evening. At first, she almost ignored it, until intuition tugged at her. She answered. "Hello," a distorted male voice responded. "Stop talking to press." Her heart skipped. "You and that old sergeant, you're playing with fire." Amina's chest tightened, but her voice stayed steady. "Who is this?" The caller laughed softly, a chilling, practiced sound. "Step back, Ms. Diallo, before someone gets hurt." The line clicked dead. Amina stared at her reflection in the dark window, a silhouette caught between defiance and fear. Mira rushed over when she heard. "Amina, this is escalating. You need protection. I need the truth to come out." Amina interrupted, but her hands trembled slightly. Layla placed a hand on her shoulder. "Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's refusing to let it decide for you." Amina nodded slowly. "Then we keep going." That night, Grace Holloway aired an exclusive interview with Sergeant Becky. Amina watched with Layla and Mira, the room quiet except for the journalist's voice. Grace asked, "Why did your warnings never make into Officer RS official record?" Becky exhaled. "Because accountability in the department isn't broken. It was never built." The sentence hit like thunder. Grace leaned forward. "Do you believe Ms. Diallo's case will finally force change?" Becky paused. Her eyes softened with something like hope. "I believe change only happens when someone refuses to step aside, and Ms. Diallo has refused." Amina felt tears gather, unbidden but unashamed. Layla whispered, "She sees you, Amina." Mira added, "So does everyone else." Amina wiped her cheek. "Then we can't stop now." Minutes later, a new notification buzzed across Amina's phone. A photo, an address, her parent house. A message beneath it. Last warning. Amina's breath froze. Layla grabbed the phone. "We're calling security." "Now." Mira stood. "I'm staying with you tonight." No argument. Amina didn't argue. She had never felt smaller, but somehow her resolve had never felt sharper, because threats meant one thing. The truth was hitting where it hurt. Amina spent the night in her living room, Mira on one couch, Layla on the other. Security posted outside the building. Sleep came only in shards. Every creak of the floorboards felt like a warning. By morning, she was already dressed, waiting for the day's first blow. It came fast. Her phone buzzed with a message from Grace Holloway. "I have something you need to see. Studio. Urgent." Amina grabbed her bag. "We're going." Mira and Layla didn't question it. Grace met them in the editing bay, a cramped room lit only by screens, each one displaying a different feed or timeline. Her expression was tight, all professionalism stripped down. "A source reached out an hour ago," she said. "Anonymous. Claims to be inside the department." She tapped her keyboard. A video filled the screen. A closed-door meeting. Grainy footage from what looked like a security camera. 5 uniformed officers around a table. A folder labeled Diallo Incident sat in the center. One officer spoke sharply. "We need to contain this." The sergeant's opening old wounds. Another replied, "She's damaging morale." A third leaned back, voice cold. "The department needs a clean narrative." The CEO resisted. The officer followed protocol. That's the story. Amina felt her skin crawl. Grace paused the footage. "There's more." The next clip showed a man, face blurred, voice distorted, standing before the camera. "This department has hidden misconduct for decades," he said. "If you're watching this, you need to know Officer RS record was sanitized. Dozens of complaints. All buried." Myra's jaw clenched. This is the end of their denials." Layla whispered, "It's a crack in the shield." Amina didn't speak. She couldn't. Her throat had locked, her pulse hammering in her ears. Grace turned to her. "I'm airing this tonight, with or without your comment. But if you want to speak, the platform is yours." Amina steadied her voice. "Air it, and I'll speak." Outside the studio, a storm had already begun to swell. Protesters gathered along the street. Signs high, chants echoing between buildings. Some recognized Amina and moved aside respectfully, creating a path. A young woman stepped forward. "We're with you," she said, "no matter how ugly this gets." Amina nodded once. Words felt insufficient. Inside her car, she sat in silence while the engine idled. Mira finally asked, "What's going through your head?" Amina answered without turning. "They're not worried about the truth. They're worried about losing control." Layla added, "Control doesn't last forever." Today, Amina said, "We push." The press conference was arranged in the studio's largest room. Lights bright, microphones lined across the table. Amina stood alone at the front, Mira and Layla stationed behind her, and security flanking the walls. Grace whispered, "Whenever you're ready." Amina faced the crowd. Cameras clicked sharply. Each flashed a tiny explosion. She spoke. Yesterday, a retired sergeant risked her safety to tell the truth. Today, someone still inside the department risked theirs. I'm standing here because silence protects abusers. And silence is over. Reporters shouted questions, but Amina continued without pause. This isn't about a single officer. This is about a system that chooses denial over accountability. A system that threatens civilians instead of protecting them. And now, thanks to brave whistleblowers, the world can see what's been buried. A reporter called out, "Ms. Diallo, have you received threats?" Amina didn't flinch. "Yes." A ripple of shock moved through the room. "And I'm still here." The words landed with weight, not dramatic, not embellished. Just true. After the conference, Grace pulled Amina aside. "There's something else," she murmured. The anonymous source sent a second message. She handed over a screenshot, a new file name, "Our internal review unreleased," along with a note, "If anything happens to you or the sergeant, this goes public." Amina stared at it. "Someone inside wants this to end." Grace corrected quietly, "Someone inside wants justice." Back at the studio office, the atmosphere cracked with a mix of adrenaline and dread. Layla locked the doors. "We need to plan our next steps." Mira opened her laptop. "We need legal counsel, crisis management, extra security." Amina shook her head. "First, we need to call Sergeant Becky. She deserves to know what's coming." But before she could dial, Myra's phone buzzed with an emergency alert. Her eyes widened. "Oh no!" Amina rushed over. "What happened?" Mira turned the screen toward her. A breaking news banner scrolled across it. "Officer R. placed on temporary suspension as internal review opens." Amina felt her lungs expand in a single, sharp breath. Not victory, but movement. Then a second alert. "Police union schedules emergency press statement in 1 hour." Layla muttered, "They're about to fight back." Amina closed her eyes briefly. Not out of fear, but focus. The storm was finally hitting the department, and storms never moved in only one direction. Another notification buzzed on her phone. Unknown number. A single line. "You think suspension is justice? You have no idea what's coming." Amina stared at the message without blinking. "Let it come," she said. "Not bravado. Resolve." The police union's press hall was a fortress of polished wood, stiff suits, and practiced composure. By noon, every major network was broadcasting from outside it. Inside the studio, Amina, Mira, and Layla watched the live stream unfold on a large monitor, the air tight around them. Officer R. did not appear in person, but his defenders did. The union spokesperson, a broad man with a rehearsed steadiness, stepped up to the podium. "We stand firmly behind Officer R," he announced. "He has served with distinction. The accusations circulating online constitute a coordinated attack aimed at destabilizing public trust in law enforcement." Amina's jaw tensed. The spokesperson continued. "Additionally, the supposed videos and documents released in recent days are being reviewed for authenticity. Much of this material appears edited, taken out of context, or deliberately misleading." Layla muttered, "There it is, the discrediting." Mira crossed her arms. "They're scared enough to start lying." A reporter asked, "What about the whistleblowers?" The spokesperson smiled thinly. Disgruntled retirees and anonymous sources are not evidence. Amina leaned forward, eyes sharp. He just erased them in a single sentence. And he knows exactly what he's doing, Mira added. The spokesperson went on. We urge the public to withhold judgment. Ms. Diallo's narrative is incomplete, and her recent media appearances, he paused, as if savoring the next blow, suggests she is motivated by personal gain and brand promotion. Amina felt a cold fury rise. My trauma is a marketing strategy. That's the narrative. Layla stood abruptly. You don't have to listen to this. Yes, Amina said quietly. I do. By late afternoon, waves of commentary flooded social platforms. Hashtags split in two, supporters fighting skeptics, strangers arguing over her character, her clothes, her tone of voice. Mira clicked through the feeds. They're trying to paint you as manipulative, opportunistic, aggressive. Amina stopped her with a hand. The same script, different day. Then her studio phone rang, an internal number. She answered cautiously. Amina Diallo. A rushed voice spilled out. Ms. Diallo, I can't talk long. I work in internal affairs. The review? It's real. But so is the pushback. They're shredding documents. They're wiping files. Amina felt the room tilt slightly. Why are you calling me? She asked. Because someone needs to know before it's too late. The caller lowered their voice. There's a file they can't erase. A physical copy. An early one, locked in a storage room that predates digitization. If you get it, everything changes. Where is it? A beat of hesitation. Then, basement archives. Record room B17. The line snapped dead. Mira stared at her. Who was that? Internal affairs, Amina said, and I think we just got a path. They moved fast. Grace Holloway met them in the parking garage beneath the studio. She had already heard fragments of the union statement and arrived with a camera crew waiting the van, engines running. When you texted, we have a lead, I assumed you meant a document, Grace said. Not this. It's a document, Amina replied. We're just getting it firsthand. Grace studied her. You understand the risk. Amina answered simply. The truth's worth it. Grace motioned her crew. Then we roll. The municipal building loomed over them, tall, gray, cold. An officer at the front desk barely glanced at their badges. Amina kept her expression steady. Mira and Layla walked closely behind her, pretending to be staff. Inside the elevator, Grace whispered, Record room B17. That's deep in the restricted archives. Amina nodded. Then we don't hesitate. The elevator doors opened to a dimly lit corridor. Pipes lined the ceiling. The hum of industrial ventilation echoed like a distant engine. They walked swiftly. Each turn felt heavier, each step louder. Finally, B17. A metal door. No window. A keypad lock. Great, Layla whispered. We're stuck. Mira stepped forward. Let me try something. She pulled a small flashlight from her bag and angled it against the keypad. Faint smudges revealed the most used numbers. 1379. Mira exhaled. For digit code. Probabilities are limited. Amina watched her work, calm, quick, rehearsed. On the third attempt, the keypad clicked green. Go, Mira said. They pushed inside. The room was a maze of steel shelves, old boxes, dusty binders. Amina's heart thudded as she scanned labels. Look for disciplinary records, she whispered. Grace stayed near the door, camera rolling but silent. Then, Amina, Layla said suddenly, holding up a binder with faded letters. R. Internal Incidents /2013 to 2016. Amina took it carefully, almost reverently. She opened to the first page. Her breath hitched. Complaints. Multiple. From civilians. From trainees. From fellow officers. Words like excessive force, racial bias, verbal aggression, unreported escalations. Everything the department insisted did not exist. This is it, Mira murmured. Amina closed the binder. We need to get out of here. But before she could turn, Footsteps thundered in the hallway. Grace hissed, "Someone's coming." Amina's pulse spiked. Layla grabbed her arm. "Hide." "No." Amina whispered. We walk out, and we walk out holding the truth. The footsteps stopped directly outside the door. A hand tested the handle. Mira stepped closer to Amina. Layla moved to her other side. Grace braced the camera. The door handle turned again. Harder. Amina tightened her grip on the binder. The door began to open. The door pushed inward an inch, then stalled, as if whoever stood outside was deciding whether to commit. Amina held the binder against her chest, pulse hammering in her ears. Mira and Layla closed ranks beside her. Grace steadied her camera, its red light glowing like a warning. Then the door flew fully open. A uniformed officer stepped inside, tall, broad-shouldered, his expression sharp with suspicion. His eyes swept the room, pausing on the camera, then on Amina's grip around the binder. "What are you doing in here?" he demanded. Amina forced her breathing into a steady rhythm. "Retrieving records relevant to an ongoing case. You're not authorized to be in this section." Grace replied before Amina could. "We're here with a whistleblower's lead. You can verify with your department's internal review team." The officer's gaze darkened. Internal review doesn't authorize civilians in restricted archives. Layla stepped forward, chin raised, then explained the locked door, the wipe files, the threats. "Back up," he snapped. Mira moved between him and Amina. "We're leaving with this binder." He reached for his radio. Amina's voice cut through the air. "If you stop us, you obstruct accountability." The officer hesitated, a flicker of uncertainty in his eyes. Cameras complicated everything. The red recording light wasn't just a warning. It was leverage. He lowered the radio slightly. "That file does not leave this room." Amina's expression didn't shift. "It's already left." She nodded toward Grace's rolling camera. "And it keeps leaving the longer you stand there." The officer looked at the camera, at the corridor behind him, at the binder. A calculation played out on his face, the kind that had nothing to do with ethics and everything to do with self-preservation. After a long, fractured moment, he stepped aside. "No one saw you come in," he said quietly. "No one sees you leave." Amina walked past him, holding the binder like evidence salvaged from a fire. The rest followed, silent, swift. In the hallway, Mira exhaled shakily. That was a gamble. Amina answered, "Everything is now." Outside the municipal building, the air felt sharper, colder. Grace's van door slid open, and the crew scrambled inside. "Let's get this digitized," Grace said. Immediately, Amina handed over the binder. "Make multiple backups, physical and cloud." Grace nodded and turned to her team. "Archive room, recording suite, secure line now." The van sped off toward the studio. Amina, Mira, and Layla returned to Amina's car in a tense silence. Only once the doors shut did Layla finally speak. "You know that officer?" He wasn't neutral. He was afraid. Mira nodded. "Afraid of whatever's in that binder." Amina stared through the windshield. "We need to prepare. The union won't stay quiet after this." Back at the studio, Grace met them in the main editing room. The binder sat open on a large table, pages meticulously spread out under bright lamps. Boxes labeled digitized were already filling. "This is worse than I expected," Grace said. "Years of buried complaints. Patterns. Signatures from supervisors. Missing pages where there shouldn't be gaps." Amina leaned over the pages. "This is systemic, not accidental, not isolated." "It's a blueprint," Mira said, "of everything they tried to hide." Grace looked at Amina. "We can air this tonight. But airing it means escalation. They'll come after you harder." Amina's voice stayed even. "Air everything." Layla squeezed her shoulder. "We're with you." Evening fell heavy and electric. The hour before broadcast, Amina stood alone in the green room, a small space with low lighting and a single mirror. She stared at her reflection, searching for signs of fear or fatigue. Both were there, but neither were large enough to stop her. A knock at the door. Sergeant and Becky stepped inside. I came as soon as I heard, she said. Amina felt a surprising wave of relief. We found a binder, early disciplinary records. Becky nodded once, jaw tightening. The ones I was told didn't exist. They existed, Amina said, and they were hidden. Becky's eyes shone with restrained anger. Then tonight isn't just about your story. It's about every woman, every recruit, every civilian who was dismissed. Amina nodded slowly. And it's about you. Becky rested a hand on her shoulder. It's about all of us. When the segment aired, the city seemed to freeze. Grace narrated the story with the precision of someone unveiling a truth long overdue. Screens filled with evidence. Dates, names, statements, shredded but reconstructed memos. Early reports showing identical patterns to Amina's own encounter. Then Grace's voice narrowed. And these records were not lost. They were hidden. The final image was a binder itself, its faded label illuminated under studio lights. Amina watched from the control room. Her hands stayed clasped, but her heart raced. Mira whispered, "This is going to shake the department." Layla added, "It'll shake the whole city." When the broadcast ended, phones exploded with messages, support, disbelief, outrage, threats. Amina silenced every notification. She needed stillness. But stillness didn't last. A sudden pounding on the studio's back entrance cut through the corridor. 3 loud bangs. Mira tensed. "Whose?" Another bang. "Harder," Layla whispered. "Security should have called us." The pounding came again. A voice shouted through the door. "Amina Diallo." Amina's blood chilled. "We need to talk." The voice outside the studio door had the sharpness of authority, but carried a weight of caution that even Amina could recognize. She took a slow breath, gripping the edge of the table where the binder now sat in plain view. Mira and Layla flanked her, silent, ready. A loud knock followed, firmer this time. "Ms. Diallo," the voice called again. "This is internal affairs. We need to discuss your findings. Now." Amina's pulse quickened, but she didn't move. Mira glanced at her, eyes questioning. Amina simply nodded. They opened the door cautiously. A middle-aged man, badge clipped to his jacket, stepped inside. His expression was measured, professional, but his eyes betrayed the strain of the storm outside. "Thank you for letting me in," he said. "I've been following the developments closely. We verified the documents you obtained. Officer RS record, it matches every pattern you expose." Amina kept her voice neutral. "So what happens next?" "We're initiating a full departmental review." He's suspended pending further investigation, and the union's attempt to control the narrative is being formally challenged. Your documentation, the binder, the footage, the whistleblower testimony, it's irrefutable. She felt a strange mixture of relief and exhaustion. And the rest? Those who covered this up. They're being held accountable. Administrative hearings start next week. Criminal investigations are underway for certain cover-ups. Layla exhaled audibly. Mira placed a hand on Amina's shoulder. Amina nodded, not from triumph, but from recognition of the weight lifted, momentarily. "And my story? It's validated," he said. "Your actions and the whistleblower's courage force transparency. You have changed the trajectory of this department." Amina's gaze dropped to the binder on the table. "And yet, this doesn't erase what I felt in that store. Or the threats." "No," he admitted, "but it ensures it doesn't happen the same way again. That's something." By afternoon, news networks carried live coverage. Officers suspended amid hidden record revelations. CEO's story sparks accountability. Commentators dissected patterns, systemic failures, the courage of civilians and whistleblowers alike. Social media amplified every clip, every quote. Amina's calm, measured recounting of events became the anchor of the narrative, not sensationalism. At the studio, Amina finally allowed herself to sit, hands clasped over her face. Mira and Layla flanked her, quiet witnesses to the culmination of weeks of tension, fear, and strategy. Her phone rang. It was Sergeant Becky. "I watched the broadcast," Becky said, voice low but steady. "You held the room. You carried the story with integrity. And now justice begins." Amina swallowed hard. "We didn't just carry the story. We made it impossible to ignore. Becky's laugh was soft, tired. And that's how change starts. The next morning, the city's streets felt different. Cafes, offices, and transit hubs buzzed with talk about the department's shakeup. Protesters continued to gather, but now their chants carried a note of triumph rather than helpless anger. At her office, Amina walked past employees whispering in awe, some brimming with pride. She stopped at her design table, touching fabric laid out for the upcoming showcase. For the first time in weeks, she felt something light beneath the lingering tension. Possibility. Owen approached quietly. Your company weathered this storm without compromise. The investors, they're impressed. Amina didn't look up. Impressed that we survived, or that we refused to stay silent? Both, he said. The final piece came weeks later. Officer R was formally charged with misconduct, abuse of authority, and record falsification. Several high-ranking officials faced disciplinary actions. The department released a public statement committing to systemic reforms and independent oversight. Amina watched it all unfold from her studio, the city outside bustling, but no longer feeling like a weight pressing against her chest. The scars remained, the memory of fear, the threats, the humiliation, but they were tempered by the knowledge that her persistence had forced accountability. She placed her hands on the binder, now fully digitized, and whispered to herself, "We survived. We fought, and the truth remains." In the quiet of her studio that evening, she finally allowed herself to breathe fully. The fabric boards glimmered in the soft light. The sketches, the patterns, the texture she loved remained untouched by the storm. Outside, the city hummed with life, indifferent but witness to the ripple effect of courage. And Amina knew, deep in her chest, that while the road ahead would always hold shadows, the light of truth would never be erased. Her phone buzzed, a single text from Marcel. "You did it." Amina smiled faintly, not for validation, not for applause, but because, at last, justice had a voice strong enough to be heard.